the YouTube channel and our Twitch stream. So, all
Sure.
right, we are live. So, what is up, everyone? Scott Brandt coming tonight on the High School and Beyond podcast. And I've got a great friend of mine here with me, Danielle McCarthy. And she's going to talk, she'll share her story, what she has experienced, but also a very unique perspective in regards to the funding process. And I've spoken on this before with the funding to pay for college. If college is the correct route for your student to go, we want to make sure that they don't end up getting hurt because of a lack of funding. And so I know what Danielle will bring. I don't know how much I've talked on it, but she'll bring a very unique perspective to the funding process. And it's one of those things that people sometimes don't realize. And the other thing for everybody that's watching this live right now, all the lights behind me, I drove down because there's a meeting at 7 that I'm speaking at. So that's why we see lights going on right now. So I'm safely parked. But yeah, just coming on and let's do this. So I'll have Danielle come on and share a little bit about who she is, her history, and get into the topic that we're talking about.
So I should let you know I'm watching this through my phone on Facebook, and you are a blank screen. I am the only one showing up. Just FYI.
Well, am I into shows? I don't know. So
Told
I guess
you.
we've got the blank box and Danielle McCarthy. There we go.
Yeah, it's a good thing I love you, and that you're such a great friend. So yes, my name is Danielle McCarthy. I'm with a company called Five Rings Financial. I'm also a retired special education teacher, and I want to talk to you guys tonight about what it's like to look at high school. I've also raised 4 sons. All 4 of my sons are all adults at this point and doing various things. A couple have tried their feet at college. One has actually done really well in college until family situation, until my husband's death kind of switched him out. And I think that will be something that he looks forward to doing at some point again. And I do have a son that's in the military. So looking at high school and beyond, there's a lot of things to consider, right? We're asking kids at 16, 17, 18 to really make some hard choices about their life and huge financial decisions, right? Especially when you're looking at student loan debt, when you're looking at career choices, right? Who's to say that at 18? Because when I was 18, like from my personal story, when I was 18, I did the University of Mom first, mastered hard knocks, PhD military life, because my husband was in the military. My late husband was in the military, and so I actually did end up going to college after a while. It was in my late 20s, early 30s that I did go back to school. I actually went to a community college, then on to a 4-year university, earned a bachelor's degree in sociology, minored in communications. Along the way, I found sign language interpreting. That took me into the education realm. And from there, and I was the first person in my family, first generation of my family to actually attend college, graduate, go on to earn a a graduate degree. Went on to earn a master's degree in special education and specialized in a couple of different things while I was there. And then I also have done coursework towards a master's in business administration. So coming from a family who didn't understand really the concept of college and what that meant, as well as kind of, what do you mean you don't know that you're going to college? What are you going to go to college for? Like, are you going to be a doctor? Are you going to be a lawyer? I really didn't know at the time. And so that was a huge barrier and a huge challenge to take on. And then also being a non-traditional student was a huge thing. But as a special education teacher, seeing kids, regular ed kids, as well as special education students, not really understand that transition, what that transition looks like. And having worked with them, we want kids to kind of know what they're doing, where they're going. And some kids have that calling of like, yep, I know I'm going into the military. Yep, I know I'm going to be a mechanic, or I'm going to be a doctor, I'm going to be a lawyer, whatever that is. But sometimes at age 18, you just don't know. You're still young, right? You don't know what you don't know. And then when we look at funding for college anymore, college is expensive. College is extremely expensive. And I don't know that I want my children, especially starting out with that much debt and trying to get out from underneath that. I still carry some college loan debt. After my husband's death, and kind of how I came into what I do now with Five Rings Financial is after his death, I came into Five Rings Financial, and now what I do with that is I teach people about money. And I have everything from funding college, what does that look like, and not your traditional plans that are out there like your 529s and that type of thing, but actually using indexed universal life as a way to protect a child, number one, but also using that money as the cash value in that life insurance develops, being able to use that to fund college. And what's really nice about that is it does a couple of things. First of all, it protects the child in case something were to happen. Because of the companies that I work with, there's also living benefits life insurance. So in case of a critical illness, a chronic illness, or a terminal illness, there are some benefits as well that way. So a child's protected that way. The other thing is, as this cash value life insurance grows, as the policy grows, the nice thing is by the time, if it started at a young age and it's funded appropriately and it's built appropriately, a lot of people don't understand that life insurance policies, specifically IULs and what we do and what I specialize in, you can actually tailor these specifically to you as individual as a fingerprint for the most part. So there's a lot of stuff that can be done on the backside, and that's a misnomer anymore, especially in the financial industry, and being able to understand how to do that. So that's what I do on that. And I teach people how to do that. The other thing about using cash value life insurance to fund college, which is also really interesting, is it is not reportable when you do the FAFSA. So when you're funding for college, it's not something that you have to report to FAFSA. So you can still get this, the grants, the scholarships, the aid through FAFSA, but also then partner that with the IUL, the cash value life insurance, to also fund for college or whatever you need. It's also something that, let's say that your child doesn't go to college. Maybe they are more interested in being a YouTuber or a trades. That's where you can look at that. Now, there are trade schools, but maybe that's what they need to use. Or maybe your child just wants to go straight into the entrepreneurial world and start their own business straight out of high school. We've seen it done. There's that option there with that. So I love being able to do that. On the flip side, for people who may have already gone to college or struggling with student loans, there are some programs out there to look into that can help potentially pull some to help with those student loans, and look at income-based repayment plans. Some of that might be forgiven depending on the industry that you're in. It's all worth having a conversation with a financial individual who's very well knowledgeable, and that is something that I specialize in, just simply because as a financial professional, I want to hit all aspects of what a family's going to go through, everything from birth through death and everything in between, that little dash of life, if you will.
And that's great. That's great information right there, right off the bat. And we do have a couple individuals that chimed in here. Jared Scott said, "Yep, you're a blank box, Scott Brandt." So I don't know. Saying. And Brandy's like, "Why is Scott off camera?"
Because he's giving me the spotlight, Brandy.
We're trying to help Danielle with her process of doing live. So, hey, imperfect action. Here we go. I don't know, but no, this had to be done. Well, it didn't have to be done, but it's something that I do every week. And so, with you being a teacher, and I know you've substituted teaching before here in Colorado Springs up to the Vanguard Academy. When you look at that world and you see the interaction with the students and the teachers, how often are we allowing students to have that voice for what they want to do? Or is it more of, nope, this is what you need to do. Let's drive the paradigm down that this is the only way to go. What was your experience that you saw in regards to that type of interaction?
So the Vanguard Academy is actually a great school. It's a great school, especially if your child is college bound and that's something that you're looking for as a family. There again, though, as a retired special education teacher, I'm going to say it's time. You really need to have a conversation. some students may not be a college ready right out of high school. They may need some time in the real world, whether that's working a job for a year or two, or looking at it. Again, a lot of college freshmen fail their first year just simply because it's too overwhelming. That's such a huge transition in life. And I'm not saying, please don't hear me. I'm not saying don't send your kids to college. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is it's worth a discussion, because when you're going to put out that type of money, and we're talking thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars anymore, because you have, dormitory, you have food, you have, shelter, housing, and all of that. Plus, that's not to mention, the actual academia that you're paying for. So it's worth sitting down and really having a lengthy discussion. And I know you've talked about before, Scott, in some presentations and on the podcast, that's where, that middle school time is a great exploration time for kids to kind of go and look at different professions that they might be interested in, or vocations that they might be interested in, and allowing them to go talk to a doctor or a lawyer or a veterinarian and go experience that, go volunteer in the community, see what's out there. I know with my 4 sons, as much as I would have wanted all 4 of them to go to college, some of them just didn't have the wherewithal to sit through 4 years of school. My sons are a little bit more hands-on. Most of them are heading towards the automotive and or trade route, which is super fun because they're all mechanically inclined. They love being underneath the hood of a car or whatever, or using their hands. I have another one does amazing stuff with car stereos and building out speakers and understanding the math and the concepts and the volume and all of that when it comes to, building out speaker cabinets and what that looks like. So again, it depends. And different high schools do different things. Vanguard Charter Academy in Colorado Springs is specifically garnered to foster that college-bound, that college preparatory at the high school level, which is great. But there's going to be other high schools that aren't like that. So I know that there's some other amazing charter schools around Colorado Springs that specialize in different things. And a lot more charter schools are starting to really try to look at that trades aspect and incorporate more of that. I know one of the local school districts was starting to look at offering an automotives trade. And within that automotive trade specialty at the high school level, there was also incorporating all the math, all the English, and even engineering and amazing things. So again, I think there's a time, and I know you had a guest on, I think it was a week ago, Greg Sheldon, who's got Auto Shop Vocational. Again, looking at not all kids are college bound, not all kids are going to go that way, and that we really need to rethink kind of what we're doing in American education, in public education. And I would agree with that. Not every child is meant to sit behind a desk constantly. Not every child is going to be a book learner. That's, we need to come up with a better way of educating our kids and preparing them for the future. My personal thought, having been in the education realm, I think there's still a great thing that public education teachers are doing. And I think it's still one of the most noblest professions out there and positions that you can have. Unfortunately, as time has shown us, teachers aren't paid what they're worth. We all know that. We do it, those of us that were teachers, we did it because we loved the job, not because we got paid to do the job. And which is great. However, at some point when it's not even a livable wage, some days for beginning teachers, or in my case, trying to go back into the workforce, being a master's prepared teacher, the door was closed simply because my salary at my level and where I come in at as far as my education is expensive. And sadly, those doors are closed. So that's part of the reason I came into the financial industry. And then picking a company that truly does use education to teach people. So one of the best places that we do that is through Money, Mommy, and Me, a program that we do to teach parents about kids, teaching kids about money. We base it on a book and that's out in the world. And we base it on that. But in there, we also have a conversation about what it's like for college funding, the different types of college funding that's out there, the different accounts that you can use, and what might be preferable for your family. So again, it depends, right? Every child's going to be different and every college is going to be different. And I have one son that went through several different colleges before he really found the one that he felt comfortable in. And again, that's something to look at and discuss, you know, what you see on a weekend orientation visit versus actually getting into the grind of day-to-day dorm living on campus, and what that looks like. Totally different. So again, you know, it's a kind of a live and learn imperfect action type thing.
Very, very true. And I have to laugh because I was talking to a high school guidance counselor at a charter school here, and she was discussing the fact that they had a student that looked at Penn University. And of course, all these schools are going to make it look so nice and pretty and great on the brochure. And then she went to visit the school and was like, this is not where I want to be. It was like in the middle of nowhere. I think she said it was like the ghetto. And she's like, I cannot do this. And so
Right.
it's one of those unique things that because of we can manipulate pictures and we can throw our best picture out there, how it draws people in. But that's the thing though too is like I think Greg had talked about it or Garrett talked about it was the whole community college aspect.
Mm-hmm.
That's an aspect. Jasper talked about that too. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say community colleges are a great option, especially kind of coming right out of high school. Just simply because one, you can get a lot of your gen ed credits done relatively more and get your gen ed credits done more inexpensively than instead of paying more at the university. And in the state of Colorado, a lot of our community colleges partner very well with local universities, so you can start at the community college level, get all your gen ed stuff out, and maybe a little bit towards your major, and then spend 2 years at the community college and then directly transfer and have the vast majority, if not all, don't quote me on this. This is where you again have a discussion with the community college guidance, the counselor, and your supervisor. I can't remember what they call it at the college level. It's not a counselor, advisor. Thank you. Your advisor at the college level to help ensure that you're taking the right credits for what you're looking for to ensure that they're going to transfer to the four-year university. So that's been a nice partnership. Not all states have that. I know that the state of Colorado has that. I was very lucky to have that happen when I did my college degrees. Started the community college, moved up to the university, and got the vast majority of my degree at the community college level, and then only had to do I think 3 semesters, maybe 3.5, like a winter semester, and then had my bachelor's degree. So again, having a conversation with advisors at the college level, knowing what your child wants, and community college is a great place to start. It's an absolute great place to start. Typically, classes are smaller. It's a little bit more cohesive, smaller community, a little bit more one-on-one. So I'm a huge fan of community colleges.
Yeah, and I think it is a great avenue, especially if you get a student that really doesn't have an idea about what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But that's also important too, and that's stuff that with college funding solutions is helping the student kind of have an idea about what they want to do. So that way, when they go to college, they have that path that they know that they need to go down instead of going in and they're like, I don't know what to do. And then 2 years of general stuff. And then they're like, I want to get into accounting. And then they do a semester accounting. They're like, this is stupid. So let me go change something else.
Right.
And that's unique. But thinking about like you were talking, teachers have a lot on their plate. They're underpaid with what they're providing our future leaders. I think one of the big things that we really miss out on when it comes to the education piece, and Greg talked about this last week, was a different type of learning styles and how to gain your education. The education system right now that we have kind of hamstrings teachers to really share their experience, to get that really in-depth relationship with the student and get them excited to learn, because people have to understand a part of education is learning from the experience of others. But I don't think our teachers in the education system right now have that opportunity to really share and do a deep dive and get kids excited to learn. Because Greg had talked about that last week, is if you can get kids excited to learn, this makes it so much simpler, so much easier, but we're at a point where it doesn't really happen that way.
So, well, right. And Greg makes some great points. To that end, though, there's also a point where some of that learning so there's more taking place than just quote unquote book learning. Because in a classroom and teaching kids in a certain way, there's also an expectation, because in the workforce there's going to be an expectation that you abide by company culture, company whatever, if you're going to be, in the job field, right? If you're going to go into a career. So there's going to be expectations. So there's also latent learning that goes on within a classroom. And so not to just kind of discount all book learning. I think there's multiple ways of doing it. And ideally, right, the best education would take into account, and there's some amazing teachers out there doing some amazing things still that do take into account that multifaceted education perspective. So yes, I would agree that right now the vast majority of our pedagogy within schools is from a book. It's not hands-on, and it's not getting as multidimensional and as multifaceted as I would like to. But you're also talking to a special education teacher who we're taught completely differently than regular ed teachers, simply because we're dealing, kind of outside the norm of a classroom. We're dealing with students with either behavior concerns, they have significant learning challenges, they may be physically, mentally disabled, they may have other concerns that we have to deal with, i.e. medical concerns that impact their learning. So we have a different perspective when it comes into teaching kids. And, we're kind of taught within the scope of, a classroom, how to use various tools, resources, tap dance on the ceiling, if necessary, to get a child to learn. And there's also a point of, yes, we want kids to be excited. And I personally am one that I think learning should be fun. When learning's not fun, we all know that learning, we all are guilty of this. It's not fun, I don't want to do it, right?
Yep.
But there's also a point where you do have to, as an adult, do things that you don't like, that aren't fun, right? Mary Poppins taught us that. A spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down, right? We're cleaning the nursery. How do we figure out how to clean the nursery, right? We have a whistling song, or we do something like that. So trying to find that balance in between and is difficult. And it's difficult when you're in a classroom of 25 to 30 kids and trying to meet the needs of all of those children. Just in a basic regular ed classroom. Now, if you throw in some special education kiddos in there, and that's where I personally think we need to change the pedagogy of teachers in general, so that they can meet that. I personally think that classroom teachers across the board, regardless of what you're teaching, need to be trained as special education teachers, and the pedagogy that goes with that. And then added to, if they're a math teacher, an English teacher, an elementary school teacher, a kindergarten teacher, because what we learned in special education, what we're taught as special education professionals, is that we use a universal design. So all of our lesson plans are meant to hit every child at every level, using as many of the senses as possible, because that enlightens more of the brain. The more of the brain that you can tap into, the more synapses you connect, the more highways you get between those neurons, and we get everything going. So unfortunately, right now, as a society, we've moved towards, as Greg said, more of book learning, but there are some amazing teachers out there who are doing so many more things than just books. So, and I was one of them. So, and I'm going to back up my professionals and the teachers who are still out there in the trenches doing this, because it's not easy, even on the best of days. And then on the worst of days, going home in tears as a teacher is a real thing. I know I myself have done it multiple times. And I watch my colleagues do the same thing. So the system as a whole, yes, definitely needs an overhaul. We're using a model that is well over 100, 150 years old, is not serving us. It served us when we were an agricultural-based society. We are no longer an agricultural-based society. So those are those things. And then one other thing I want to touch back to about the college prep piece real quick, and this dawned on me. One of my sons was able to take college courses while still at high school. So he did a dual enrollment. And some of the colleges and high schools are starting to partner and do that. And again, sometimes the school district will pick up that cost. Sometimes they don't. We were in a district that did not pick up that cost. So we as a family had to absorb that cost. And again, wish I would have known then what I know now about college funding. So those are also some ways to take advantage of getting some college courses out of the way before ending high school. Just FYI. So kind of backing up to that, but jumping back over to here with the pedagogy of teachers. Yeah, I think the pedagogy of teachers definitely needs to be changed.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you bring up the fact of the dual enrollment, because you have a lot of schools, high schools that have AP courses, and it's the advanced placement. But the issue you run into is that these students will go through those courses and then go to college, and the fact that I'm blanking on the syllabus. That syllabus for that AP class may not match up with that college that they go to. And then that credit that they receive that was supposed to help them doesn't get accepted by the college.
Right. And so there again, that's where understanding and talking with the advisor at the college, talking with the guidance counselor at the high school, really comes into play. And it also depends because, again, if it's a private school coming into a high school to do that, yes. In my son's case, and most of the cases that I'm aware of, it's usually a a state institution. So either a state-funded college or a state-funded university. Sometimes even the community colleges will offer this as well. And yes, you're right. The credit doesn't necessarily always align, right? So that's something to educate yourself on again. And a lot of this really does fall to quote unquote the consumer, right? It's going to fall to parents. It's going to fall to the students to really reach out and have conversations with a professional like yourself with College Funding Solutions and understanding, how to have a conversation with the college about what they're offering as far as funding, having a conversation with myself as a financial professional early on, in a child's life and getting a financial plan in place for a child early on. And I think we forget that, we talk about, you need to have a financial plan for retirement, but there should also be a financial plan as far as your family. There should also be a financial plan of what does this look like for your child, going to school or preparing for that. I think I touch on that in my podcast we're in the 31 days of giving yourself the gift of money this month. We talked about that a little bit. My guest and I talked about that a little bit of, setting aside that money, even just in small pieces along the way to give that gift of money. So, and having a financial plan for your child, because there are going to be costs associated with the child. We all know this, right? Beyond diapers and beyond a nursery, beyond school supplies, beyond whatever, there's going to always be a cost associated with a child. And what does that look like? The other nice thing about using an indexed universal life plan or a whole cash value life insurance plan is you can also use the money in that cash value to buy a first car, right? Or the trip to Europe that's being as part of, their Spanish class that they're taking or whatever. So there's a lot of advantages to using something like that.
Yep. And so that was actually going to be the next transition point here, talking because I did highlight the fact that you do have the funding aspect that isn't really talked about. And it's a very sad thing when you really think about this. This is stuff that really needs to be talked about. But the issue is there's a lot of push from society of this isn't a good idea, this blah, 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 because of what happened in the past in the 70s and the 80s. And so people have to understand that when it comes to completing your FAFSA. So one of the tools that we can provide families, and this is very powerful to understand, it's your expected family contribution. And so if people don't know what that is, it's abbreviated EFC. And so how this works is you've got the cost of attendance minus the EFC. And so when people are like, or families are like, my expected family contribution, that's not what you may be contributing. It's a larger conglomerate of a algorithm of a formula that colleges utilize. So all they do is they go the cost of attendance minus the EFC. Here is the financial need, whatever it is, and then they take that number, and then they'll meet that number at a certain percentage of all help, gift aid, or self-help loans and whatnot. And then they take that number and multiply it by their next number, which is the gift aid. And the gift aid is what we're really trying to target, because that's money you don't have to worry about paying back to the school after you graduate. And so you get down to this target amount. This is how much we're looking at the schools offering. And so it could be a bad thing. I've seen where one family, their target was like $4,000 from gift aid, but they applied to Notre Dame, and Notre Dame, in their funding package alone, so at the time Notre Dame was $67,000 for the year, and they were offering this family $58,000 of free money, gift aid money. And then if they took the self-help, which was the loan amount, that family was coming out of pocket of like $3,000. And so that's one of those things. But then you also have the 529 plans. And I know that's a big push. You'll see commercials of get a 529, get the tax credit. The issue with that is if you don't use it for school, you potentially run into tax consequences. And this is where it's a conversation that you have with a tax professional, a CPA or tax professional. But with that permanent insurance, the IULs, the cash value life insurance, the permanent insurance, it's a big thing because it doesn't go into the calculation of the FAFSA. And also there's laws that if you go through court, that policy that you have, it doesn't go into the calculation of what's getting paid out if you have to. But then if the student doesn't go to school, you can use it for something else. And the other thing we have to be mindful too is with health issues, you may have a healthy baby and then 6 months down the road, something pops up and then they can't get insurance. And so that impacts them and their family and the protection piece. And so this is one thing that a lot of people don't understand. And if we just had more education, which that's your part there, it would be such a huge relief for a lot of people, I believe.
Right. And again, it's understanding that piece and having that conversation, because when people, still have this thing about life insurance, especially middle America, we don't like talking about death when we sure as heck don't like talking about money, and we sure as heck don't like talking about life insurance. And so that's one of my goals, one of my missions, one of my objectives, one of my intentions is to have those conversations and kind of take that taboo away. Just because I do have a child. I had a very healthy, happy baby. He was 9 pounds, 3 ounces, and very happy, healthy baby. And by age 12, he was diagnosed as type 1 diabetic. And so he's now uninsurable. And I wish it's one of those, I wish I would have known then what I know now. Because I would love to have a life insurance policy on him. Instead, I'm going to have to look at a different route for protecting his financial future. Yes, he's in his 20s, but his mama still wants to take care of him. Same with my other 4 sons. And so again, and I still have another son who, very happy, healthy baby, very happy, healthy childhood, but his adult life has alighted some medical concerns that are rendering him uninsurable as well. So again, if that cash value life insurance policy is already in place as a child and it's been funded over time and is kept in force over time, when these 2 devastating medical conditions for my children, as far as insurability, they live very happily. Please don't hear that, they live horrible lives. But when these 2 medical diagnoses were presented, they would still have cash value life insurance backing them. And so again, it's kind of, I wish I would have known back then what I know now, so I could have better prepared and protected my family.
Yep. And so when we really think about it, because like I said, you can start these very young. I think A lot of policies you can start at the age of 16 days old.
Yep.
But
Depending on
it's
the company. Yep.
the power of what this is, because
Mhm.
one of the things that people don't realize, and so now this is kind of going way beyond high school, but it's an avenue that if you have somebody that really wants to get into real estate, a lot of
Mhm.
people that go buy real estate are using the cash value on the policy that they have to go buy real estate. And the thing is, people have to understand is you don't have to worry about going and filling out a bunch of paperwork through the bank, credit checks, all that stuff. And then the other thing is, if you take the loan from your cash value, yeah, it will reduce the death benefit if you end up dying before paying it back. But that interest that would be going back to the bank that you're paying them for borrowing the money is going back into your own policy. So it is increasing the value.
Right.
And it's just another way, too, when you're looking at funding your retirement, it gives you that peace of mind potentially that if the market goes screwy, because this is the thing, if you, all your money is in retirement accounts, 401ks, IRAs, and all that, and the market goes screwy that year and it has a negative return, and all you have is those accounts and you start pulling out, your workers that are in there, your dollars can't get healthy. And
Right.
so you can use your cash value in your life insurance policy to fund what you would do that whole year, and then see if the market had a return, and then go back to your retirement account.
Mhm.
But the
Right.
lack of
The lack
knowledge and
of education.
education.
Yeah, there's definitely a lack of education out there, even in the financial industry. There's a lack of education of what the power of cash value life insurance can do. But it also is talking with somebody who's very knowledgeable about
Mm,
what the power of life insurance can do. Financial professionals are great across the board. What we do is an amazing thing. But again, it comes down to I have more clients when I first start working with clients, they would rather tell me about their sex life than they would about their money life. Um, which I find very intriguing from a societal standpoint, but there is such a taboo around money. There's a lot of our own self value and self worth is found in our bank account,
mm,
as opposed to just our intrinsic amazingness as valuable beings of who we are, just intrinsically, not about that. I read an interesting book over the summer called The Soul of Money. It's a relatively older book. By older, I mean like 10, 15 years. But
mm,
it's The Soul of Money by Lynn Twist. And she and her husband founded Hunger International. And in the book, she talks about her journey and kind of what that was looking like. And I found it very interesting that in the book, she's worked with the poorest of the poor on our planet all the way to the elitist of the richest of on our planet, and the money stories and the money struggles were all the same. Didn't matter
mm,
the continent, didn't matter the culture, didn't matter anything of the human condition. The concept of my wealth, my bank account, was my self-worth. So it kind of comes down to two things when it comes to money. And it's not just with money, it's actually more of a life perspective is what she comes out with. It's the law of scarcity, which is
mm,
also, or the law of sufficiency, which is also we now call the law of abundance. And it depends on, we've all heard, the tales and the cliches, King Midas, everything he touched turned to gold. But then, when he went to touch his loved one, the loved one turned to gold and he became a very lonely man. So
mm,
obviously, we've been taught being greedy is not a good thing. Even the way we speak about money is
mm,
definitely, is it showing us a law of scarcity or is it showing us a law of abundance? We say the filthy rich, but are they really, what's filthy about it? Or money is dirty in some level, or that type of thing. But we also know some very amazing people who have been very great stewards with their money throughout history and have been amazing philanthropists. Andrew Carnegie was one of them, right?
mm,
One of the, even by today's standards, if we took his wealth and put it in today's money, he would still be the richest man in the world. And yet he used his money for great things. I love going to see all the different Carnegie libraries around the country. Like that was something that he did with great philanthropy. So again, what Lynn Twist talks about in her book, The Soul of Money, is just very basically the money just is a representation, a tool of yourself, and how do you use your money. And if you're giving it with great love and warmth and with the intention behind of loving and what have you, and you're giving it that way, then that's an extension of you. If you're miserly, i.e., Scrooge, we're taught that too. Poor Scrooge, he loved money more than he did people. But we also forget something about Scrooge that I kind of think we all kind of forget. Scrooge came around in the end and shared his wealth. He'd been a great steward of his money. He'd also been a miser, yes. But towards the end, though, and we find, his redeeming quality is he finds out that there's more to life than money, and then he does share his wealth. And just like, in the law of abundance, the more you share, the more it grows, right? We also know that in karmic, there's an emergency alert coming through. That's awesome. Sorry about that. We also know that, if you're very miserly with your money, potentially your life is not going to be fair. But again, it's a different perspective, right? Is it the law of abundance or is it the law of scarcity? And where are you coming up from that? And so again, when you put that into terms of education, let's not forget lifelong learning, right? College is not the end all be all of learning. Most companies anymore are asking you to continue to learn in order to earn. Most professions are asking you to continually do continuing education units or continuing education credits. You and I have talked about this a lot with the Knowledge Business Blueprint that Mark Graziosi,
Dean Graziosi and Tony Robbins.
Yeah, Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi put out with the Knowledge Business Blueprint, constantly be learning. You can see behind me, this is just one small aspect of my daily learning and my daily reading. I set a goal every year to read somewhere between 2 books a month to 5 books a month, depending on the year and what I want to grow and what I'm doing that year. And so education doesn't just have to happen inside the 4 walls of a school. It doesn't have to happen within books, right? I know you and Greg talked about, and we've talked about too, some of the best things to do is listen to books, listen to podcasts, listen to YouTube, to find education. It's out there. It doesn't have to be. And I think we're starting to see a shift more towards self-knowledge and self-learning. Yes, we're still going to colleges. Yes, we're still going to school. Yes, we're still getting certifications for certain things. But there are tons of books out there. You want to learn how to run a business? There are tons of books out there. There are a ton of podcasts. You want to become a real estate investor? There are tons of podcasts out there about that. Go talk to a real estate investor, go talk to those individuals. But never stop learning. I think the saddest statistic I've ever read is that something like less than 2% of adults, once they leave college, never pick up a book to read again. And I think that's one of the most, to me, that's one of the most disheartening and discouraging statistics out there. I absolutely love a book. And maybe if book reading is not your thing, definitely find a podcast to listen to. There's some amazing podcasts out there that are doing some amazing things that will teach you what you want to know. One of the best shows I watch on TV, not that I watch TV all that often, but Shark Tank, right? You want to learn about entrepreneurship. You want to learn the numbers behind business. Now, granted, it's just a start, doesn't teach you everything, but you start understanding. And it was interesting because when I was doing my master's and I was struggling to understand some of the concepts of the numbers, like I just couldn't get it, but I started watching Shark Tank and all of a sudden, man, that made sense.
That's awesome. And that's the thing people have to understand too, is going and reading, listening to the podcast, you're cutting down your learning curve. Because I heard somebody say that with the book that somebody writes, that's a lot of knowledge that they're passing on that you as the reader of that book can really cut down your learning curve. Yes. And that's something that Garrett and I had talked about was we really need to, like, especially at high school, if we can get in there, like they have DECA, they have all the extracurricular stuff, but if we could go create a personal development segment and bring that to the schools, how different society would look like if we got students started early with personal development. But the other unique thing too is somebody was saying that people that listen to podcasts, they find that they're more affluent than those that don't, which I was like, oh, okay, that's really unique and something to think about. But yeah, it's just the power of just going out there and really finding and keep on learning, because I've also heard the sad statement of you die twice. You die at the age of 25, and then you die when you leave the earth.
Right.
And that's just sad when you really think about it, how people stop learning and then because I've also heard it, somebody's like, well, I'm at this job and I've been here 20 years. And somebody stated that technically when you think about it, it's 1 year of experience turned over 20 times. And so that's one of the things that I had to wrap my head around. But he's also real big in personal development. And so if somebody doesn't
Right.
continue to grow and learn and doesn't bring something else to the table to expand, it's not doing anything. And so it's just one of those sad things sometimes that you come across and see.
Right. Well, and there's also something to be said too that working the same job for 20 years isn't necessarily a bad thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because depending on a person's capabilities, their learning, um their abilities, their innate abilities, that might actually be something. And as much as you and I are in the entrepreneurial world and we absolutely love it, there also has to be in any society the worker bees, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not to downplay those positions by any means, because they are probably one of the more significant needs in society, is those who do appreciate that routine and that 20 years and doing that. So depending on a person's abilities and their wants in life or what's happened in life. I'm a perfect example. When after my husband died and all that I went through and the financial devastation that I experienced with that, yeah, I had I could have just said, I'm not going to do the entrepreneurial journey. I'm just going to do the 9 to 5 job and just put my head down and deal with that. And there are some people that might be the best way that they can cope at that point in time, or that's all that's available, and more power to them, and go with it. And then for some of us that we're just kind of like, that's not enough for us, we want more. And that's not to say that because I still work part-time jobs here and there, I still do some things here and there, just because I have financial goals that I want. I'm still financially rebuilding after losing my husband, so I do appreciate that. And I have some amazing coworkers right now, and they're happy in that realm. This is where they
Mm-hmm.
want to be. They like that structure, and people need that structure. Some of us, we don't do so well in that structure. So again, it's knowing yourself, knowing your child, what might be great for your child. Again, as a special education teacher, I'm going to come back to, there are certain abilities and certain things, and everybody can contribute to society. We just have to figure out how. And there are ways to do that. So for those of us who take that entrepreneurial track and are willing to live with the uncertainty, to chase the dreams and fall, completely on our face consistently, there's that. Then there's others who may not, that they just look at us and think, wow, that's crazy. I'm just going to go sit, and I like my job and I want it to be the same for day after day. And I'm fine with it being that way for 20, 30 years. That's perfect. That's got to be perfect for them as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because not everybody's going to want that. So, and it's again, finding that balance, knowing and taking care of yourself the best way possible. And are you coming, I think the biggest thing I would like people to take away from this is understanding that for funding college, number one, there are other plans out there that have some tax advantages, that are a little bit more self-directed, and talk with a financial professional that knows how to put them together. I would be one of them, and ensure that where's the word? I just lost my word. That it's set up appropriately and it's contributed to and it stays in force, and making sure that that financial professional comes back and talks to you. Life insurance, cash value life insurance, is not kind of a one and done. Like, let's go back and have a conversation. every year, every couple of years, and is this still working for you? Do we need to change some things? What is that, and what that does look like? I'm not saying that you can instantly just change it like you would other financial tools, but it's definitely something worth having a conversation about.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as with your kiddos, constantly have a conversation about what intrigues them, and give them as much experience as you can around that, and let them experience it for themselves too, right?
Yep.
So
Very, very true. And I think it's a matter of just having the actual conversation with your kid too, and don't try to live vicariously through your kids,
yes,
because your kid is a individual. They are a
yes,
human, and so they have their own desires and whatnot. And that's one thing that I bring up, and it shocks people too. Is like, if your student has an idea about what they want to do, have them go talk to somebody in that industry to really truly see if that's what they want to do, or if they're like, nope, this isn't for me. Because the powerful thing is, in high school or middle school, that's free to change your mind. It doesn't cost anything. But if you go
right,
to college, if that's the route for you, and you decide to change your mind, that can get very expensive very
yep,
quickly. And it's not a good thing. So that's where you got to have that idea if you're going into college. But if college isn't for you, there's other ways. That's things that I talk to students, families too. I'm like, if college isn't for you, let's still figure out who you are, and then have you go talk to individuals in those industries so you can actually really see. And then I bring this up to business owners, and I still tell people, they look at me like I'm talking a foreign language. But I'm like, as a business owner, what I'm doing is I can bring a student to you, you can sit down and talk to them, see if they're a potential good fit, do an unpaid internship, give them that experience, and then if they are a great fit, bring them on as a part-time employee.
right,
And just the power of what that can do for you as a business,
right.
is with unpaid intern, you're not worried about any of the benefits. You're giving them the experience, and then you can vet that individual very well, and truly see if that's somebody that you'd like to bring on as a part-time employee, or later on down the road, have them come on full-time in the business and really drive what you're doing.
Yep. Well, and there's the other piece too. Like my undergrad was in sociology, minor in communications, and at the time, sign language interpreting was where my career track was placing. And then as I went into the education realm with sign language interpreting, discovered I loved teaching, so I kind of moved to a teaching. But I've also always known since I was a child that I would be a teacher. In fact, I have some great memories of having my stuffed animals and my dolls, the cliche, literally the cliche. And I'm standing at a blue chalkboard. Like I still have vivid memory of the blue chalkboard. It wasn't green or it wasn't black. It was a blue, but I stood there and talking with various family members. They're like, yep, education, you were always teaching. You were always showing somebody how to do something, teaching them, ensuring that they were taken care of that way. And as I look back through my life, I can kind of see that trend,
Mm.
right? Of that teaching was always there. And now I've just moved it into the financial realm, and teaching people about money. So again, you can kind of see sometimes where kids are headed. My kids love to be in the garage. They love being under cars. They love being with wrenches, nails, hammers, screwdrivers, you name it, sockets, whatever. They absolutely loved it. My husband was the same way. My husband was an airplane mechanic. He was also a car mechanic. And then he happened to find satellites and communication through the military and became, you know, um, knowledgeable on all things satellite and all the technology that we play with today. So again, you can kind of see that. But yes, for the most part, as a society, staying in one career field for the length of time outside of lawyers, doctors, those specific traits. Most people, though, are anymore. And now I think the statistic is have like 7 different career fields.
Mm.
So don't limit yourself, right? And that's again kind of having that conversation with a kiddo at 16, 17, 18. Like you said, it's an expensive trait to move once you're in college. And even now, even as an adult, potentially switching career fields might be a little challenging. But encore careers are kind of the new thing, right? As far as starting in one field and going into another, starting in education, jumping into finance. Who would have ever thought? I would have never anticipated that until my husband's death. So again, we as adults are still shifting and thinking and trading and changing and not expecting that from our children. So I think we need to allow them that space to kind of learn too. And that's, again, like you said, like you and I have said already, the community college aspect is kind of one of those great areas that kind of get their feet wet, but it's not a huge financial impact. They're not taking on as much debt. And that also needs to be a concern, is if they're taking on this college debt, are they going into a career field that's going to help them pay it back? That's something else to consider. With the cost of college right now, a lot of career fields do not make enough money to repay those college loans. So you have to ask yourself, is it advantageous? What else are you going to have to do to bring that student loan down?
Mm-hmm. Sweet. Well, what I'm going to do is, like I normally do for the end of everything, is go through some pod decks. So I don't have my other phone, so I'm going to have to, the screen's already black.
You're already black at this point. This has been the one woman highlight Danielle show. This is awesome. Thank you for this experience.
You're welcome. I look at it as kind of that pushing point for you too. So
okay, here, little chick, got to get out of the nest. Swift kick in the rear end.
It's all good. All right. So the one I'm going through right now, it's called "The Future Freaks Me Out." So
yes, it does. That's so apropos. All right, let's bring it. Let's do this.
What would you bring it on? What would you put in a time capsule now for your future family to open 50 years from now?
Ooh. For my family to open 50 years from now?
Mm-hmm.
In a time capsule. I'm going to go sentimental. I'm going to say a letter from my husband when we were first married. He was in the military. So they could see, just like, they witnessed our love for each other, but to kind of see, they weren't there right for the beginning parts of it. They only saw the latter parts of it, but to see us as a young couple. So that's what I would put in at the time capsule. Are you still there? Did you die? I lost you.
Let's see. Can you hear me?
There you are. There, I can hear you now.
Yeah, it's a good time. So I look at it for myself. I would probably put a physical copy of The Buddha and the Badass in the time capsule, because by the time 50 years comes around, we may not have physical books. It may all just be audible stuff. So yeah. But with that information too, it's one of those things that's just great information. So all right, I've got to hop off. Hopefully it keeps hearing me. Let's see here. What project do you really need to finish that you have been putting off forever?
What project do I need to finish that I've been putting off forever? I think you said it. It's the doing live videos for my podcast. Also building out the YouTube channel for my podcast. So mentioned it several times. My podcast is Coffees, Chicks, and Cash, the podcast. I'm all on major platforms I'm all on all major platforms, and I need to build out the YouTube channel a little bit more. I want to take the videos that I've done with my guests and put them on the YouTube channel so that if people want to see us talking, they can, or instead of just listening to the podcast. So I need to do that. And then I also want to build out the website, and I want to build out my Facebook page a little bit more.
Okay. I think for myself, when I look at it, it's starting to come around, but it was not really getting into writing because we've talked, I really do not like to write. I would much rather do a video or whatnot. So, but that's starting to turn around. I procrastinate sometimes, but still get into it. And then the only other thing that I can think of that I'm pushing off is kind of, and Jasper's helped me out with this, but with the coaching piece, I didn't tell you that, but Jasper's like, why don't you look at like the whole, maybe we did talk, I don't remember. So, but the whole relationship umbrella.
Yep.
Because
we did talk about this. Yep.
Yeah. So I think now, because of the name that I did go with my coaching business, which is Human Dimensions Catalyst Coaching, I was like, well,
Mhm.
here we go. So it's all coming together now. Now I've got
There you
to
go.
build a Facebook page and all that stuff.
Yep.
So I'll get Jasper to help me out. All right. Let's see here. Do you have any hidden talents you should nurture?
Hidden talents I should nurture. Writing. Writing is one of them. Think I lost you, Scott. Totally lost Scott. Says he's live, but I'm here by myself. That's all I see. Maybe he's back. Oh my gosh, we can see you now.
It kicked me all the way out. It kicked me all the way out. So,
I
yeah,
know.
we've gotten the whole.
I was floating in Facebook land all by myself there for a little bit. So the last
Well,
question was hidden talents
hidden
and writing.
talent. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I should do that more. I should write more, but I also journal a lot. But I do have a book idea. Actually, I have a couple of book ideas that probably need to start looking into.
Awesome. Hidden talent for myself. I don't know. Probably writing too. Maybe it's more of editing too. Like I don't know. I don't really like editing and whatnot, but whatever. We'll find it.
Right?
Here we go. Imperfect action. Here we go. So,
Always.
man, so that was a good time. Those are very interesting to get into. It has a different perspective and all that.
Yep.
But when you look at what we've talked about, any takeaways, anything that really stuck out that maybe you want to drive home with the audience? And then if people want to get a hold of you, how do they go about to reaching out and getting in contact?
Perfect. So 3 things to take away. Number 1, talk with a financial professional when it looks for college funding. And explore the different options that are available, and not just the ones that you typically hear about, because there are some other ones out there that have, in my opinion, other have advantages beyond just tax credits and that type of thing, and add more value to what you're trying to do for your financial household. And the second would be, as a teacher at heart and as somebody who is in the public education realm, I know this is a hard time, and I know people are struggling and we feel like our kids are going to fall behind. I want to give you a lasting thought on that. There were a lot of children that came out of the concentration camps after World War II and didn't have, they were obviously malnourished, severely traumatized, but they went on to build an amazing society beyond that. So kids are more resilient than we give them credit for, and they will come through this. We will all get through this mess right now that we're going through, but with kids that are missing, for parents that feel like their kids are missing a lot right now in the education realm because of the whole COVID thing, please understand we had an entire generation come through World War II, both on the American front, on the German front, all of that. Kids that came through the concentration camps and went on to do some amazing things. If you want to know what that looks like, there was an amazing teacher. His last name was Feuerstein, and he came up with some amazing tools and ways to help kids. We also know that brains are very plastic and very dynamic, so they're not static. So there's time. There's time for kids to catch up. They'll get this. Trust me, they will. And then third, come from a law of abundance. The world is an abundant place, even when it feels like it doesn't. And I say this as a widow. When it doesn't feel like it's abundant, it truly, truly is. So those are my 3 takeaways. And if people wanted to reach out to me, I'm on Facebook, Danielle McCarthy. You can also find me at Coffees, Chicks, and Cash, the podcast. You can also find me at Coffees, Chicks, and Cash, the Facebook page, and it's called the FB page because Facebook won't let you use Facebook in their name. In your name, which I thought was kind of weird. The YouTube channel will be here up and running here shortly. That's Coffees, Chicks, and Cash, the YouTube channel. I'm on LinkedIn under Danielle McCarthy. My Facebook page. Those are all how to reach out to me. There we go.
Sweet. What I'll do is I'll update and put your contact information in, and I need to go back. I thought I did Greg's, but I need to go back and update Greg's too. But yeah, no, thank you for your time. Thank you for jumping on. It's always a great time to have the conversations that we have. And for anybody that has watched this or is catching it on the replay or listening to it on the podcast, all we ask is that you hit the share button. So Facebook, you can hit the share button, share it with somebody that needs to hear this information. Even if you don't know if they need to hear the information, share it away. That's how this grows. That's how the information gets out. Because the only way we can help each other out is by sharing the information that we have with others. And then you have YouTube too. So there's that link out there that you can share that and whatnot. But yeah, ultimately, it's just the matter of just getting out this information, helping people out, and ultimately not being selfish by hiding and holding on to all the information that we have. So other than that, this ends the episode for this week. I will catch you guys next week after Christmas. Who I have for next week, I don't know. So I usually will reach out to people. So it may just be myself next week. So it'll be good times once we find out. So other than that, I'll catch you guys later. Appreciate your time and have a great night.
Bye, guys.